Good morning and welcome back to the FloTrack podcast. My name is Lincoln Shrike. He is Gordon Mack. It is Wednesday, October 21st, and we didn't get to it yesterday, but big news did happen on Tuesday, right around wake-up time. Bahrain sprinter world champion in the 400, Salwa Eid Naser, is suspended no longer. She had a whereabouts case that included 4 whereabouts failures in a 12-month year. But as we knew from the 2019 Christian Coleman case, you can backdate those filing failures, which happened. And then one of her missed tests got wiped out due to a comedy of errors and misfortunes that we'll get into in a little bit. But once again, the whereabouts issue strikes, and the AIU, the Athletics Integrity Unit, who brought this case, left with a little egg on their face. Gordon, what was your reaction to this ruling getting reversed by the World Athletics Disciplinary Tribunal, and now someone who has had trouble taking their tests and staying on top of their the whereabouts database, if you will, now getting allowed to compete?
My reaction was kind of indifferent, to be honest, because all the whereabouts failures that have happened over the past year and a half have kind of just like been so much that like I'm starting to not care. It reminds me of when there was like new Russian news on like the doping situation every like 4 months about like, oh, they're still banned. Oh, they still are doing their bad things. And it's just like the news cycle of it just got so repetitive that I just didn't care anymore. I was like, I don't care about this whole Russia doping thing. Like, let him jump, let him throw, let him run or not. I don't care anymore. It's too much. Because that's what it became like back in like 2018 and 2017 or whatever. And then in this situation, when we have everyone and their mom getting a whereabouts failure, and you get them, and then like 6 months later, they're like, oh, actually, never mind. You know, like Gabrielle Thomas. She's like, oh, never mind. No, it doesn't count. You know, Christian Coleman, a whereabouts failure. And then a few months later, oh, never mind. You can compete at Worlds. It just feels like another one of those things where World Athletics or whoever's in charge of anti-dope, what's the name of the organization that does
Integrity.
it?
Athletics Integrity Unit.
Yeah, AIU. I mean, in the end, I'm just like, it's all bullshit. Because it's just like, we have these rules. We have exceptions for the rules. We have, well, the rules technically are too hard or too easy. All this is just, it's a long-winded answer to say, like, I give up. I give up on caring about whereabouts failures because in the end, whereabouts failures also like, it's like a weird doping violation in my opinion because like, all right, like it's just like I get the reason you need to do it because you can dodge tests, but like I don't know. It's just hard. It's like it's just hard to label someone forever a doper because of a supposedly dodged test. And then when you hear stories about like what Christian Coleman's saying, like they knocked on my door, they didn't call, and they're like, oh, we don't need to call you. That's not part of the rule book. I'm like, why do we have this rule? It's just like too much. Long-winded answer. I think she got off because she's an important runner in the sport. And I think it was a technicality. I think all these runners are getting off of technicalities. But I also think a lot of these runners are getting suspended over technicalities. So it's like they're both playing the technicality game, right? Oh, you're going to get me on a technicality? Well, I'm going to get out of it on a technicality. That's the way I look at it.
I fully believe in the need for this whereabouts system, and it's necessary because if it wasn't there, you would have international athletes of mystery, perhaps, you know, not being able to be contacted to be tested. And I understand, and I appreciate the AIU for wanting to hold these athletes accountable. They've really ramped up their initiative here in the last couple years to have athletes follow through. And that is why we're seeing a lot of these whereabouts things and seeing the numbers really spike. That I think has come at a cost though, as we have seen these cases come up, preliminary suspensions, and then there's been several high profile reversals which really leave the athletics integrity unit with some egg on their face. This case is pretty astonishing if we get down to it. When you talk about someone in Naser who had 4 failures, whereabouts failures, 3 missed tests, and 1 filing failure within a 12-month span. We knew all of these were before the World Championships. She was allowed to compete at the World Championships. This case, from start to finish, from the 3rd registered test to completion yesterday or whenever it was, took over 400 days. That is absurd. That process is broken. The track and field needs to fix this issue. Another thing that needs to be fixed is any punishment, a lack of punishment, impunity for the athletes like Naser, who are allowed to get by on the fact that they did not update their app appropriately. Not only did Naser not update her app appropriately and list the correct address and give instructions for this tester to get into her apartment, she doesn't even update her own app. That is outrageous that she is going to be able to essentially not do this herself and benefit from that. The mistest that was at the center of this case, she listed the wrong address. She gave no instructions to for the tester to understand how to get into her building. He was knocking on a storage unit door. It had the number 11 next to it. The number 11 was associated with a parking spot, not her number 11 apartment. I've done food delivery in my life as a short-term job. I know how complicated it is just in Austin, Texas, to find people's apartments. And I grew frustrated with people on Instacart or whatever it was when they didn't list, hey, this is what you do when you come through. You're just expected to find this apartment, and every apartment's different. And I would get upset at people and be like, come on, where's the responsibility? Do you want your food delivered on time? Like, tell me how to get into your place. It's not always self-explanatory. This is outrageous. She basically benefited, and you can give her, she's, innocent until proven guilty. You can give her the benefit of the doubt and say maybe she had nothing to hide. But there is some raised suspicion when somebody doesn't provide all these details, lists the wrong apartment building number. She lists 964 instead of 954. 964 doesn't even exist. Thankfully, the tester was able to find the building just off of a photo. But she faces no punishment for having the wrong address listed. If I type in the wrong address to Amazon, my package is not going to make it to my house. And she was lucky that this guy was even able to arrive, but that he was not able to figure out the door. And because none of these instructions were listed for her or for him, and that benefits her. I don't understand this at all. So my long-winded takeaway, I suppose, from this is that the AIU is wanting to do the sport good, but they have not figured out a appropriate and speedy way for this to actually be followed through. And I can't help but look at this case through the prism of the other high-profile whereabouts case that is still ongoing, that is still going to be appealed, and that's Christian Coleman's, which also came in June of this past year, was also announced. Coleman, there is some debate between him and his DCO, the doping control officer, about if the DCO was at the address that he was supposed to be at, if he was knocking on the door. Coleman says he was at his apartment in his window. He has receipts to prove when he left. It's going to be a he said situation, like I mentioned. It feels like this is the perfect scenario for Coleman to also see his case dropped. And if that happens, I mean, the AIU already feels like a joke. But if Coleman is able to get off, if you have 2 world champions get off under seedy circumstances, I don't know what the point of the whereabouts thing is anymore, because it seems like you can just get off. And that's going to show athletes who maybe, I'm not going to say if Naser or Coleman actually have ill intent or if they're actually hiding something, but it's going to spur on athletes that are trying to hide something and say, well, worst case scenario, I get a whereabouts case against me. I get 3 failures within a year. I'll just have my lawyers get out of it and I'll be fine. Like, this is ridiculous. She was able to get off on this, and it just shows me that it's good news for Christian Coleman, in my opinion, because he could have a similar argument. And if there is not definitive proof on the side of the DCO that he was knocking on the corrected door, remember that Christian Coleman says that the address listed in the report is not his address. Well, that gives you that little window of light that puts in that doubt that suggests that Coleman may get off here.
Yeah, before we keep going, how are you holding your mic? Is it on a flat surface? Yeah, I think it's because you're holding it. When you hold it, it makes noise while you talk.
Oh,
you
sorry.
put it on maybe put it on a table or something. Are you on a bed? Is that why?
That's too much to ask. Yeah, I got a bed. I got a house, man. I got people in other places.
Yeah,
other rooms.
I think you need I think you need to find a place where you just put it on a desk and you sit in a chair, because when you're holding it, it's making a pop sound every time you move slightly.
Yeah, the issue is I got a baby and sleep in one room. The other rooms are being occupied.
Are you in a room by yourself right now?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll put it on the floor then.
I'm not gonna sit on the floor. I'm way too old for that. My back would crack in half if I sat on the floor.
Well, we need to figure out a solution, because it's the mic, when it's not, when you're holding it, you slightly just kind of like a little bit of you get a little bit of those.
Yeah, the people want to hear what I have to say. They can hear through it. My point is that this system, when you have the AIU charging these cases, but they're sending DCOs, of which a third party, and there's not always the DCO has to be perfect for this case to be followed through. And when in the case of Salwa Eid Naser, the tester didn't try this door that he didn't even know was going to lead to her apartment, or at least he says he tried it and it was locked, but there's no way to confirm that. So they go to the side of the athlete. Every time we get one of these whereabouts cases, we're just going to roll our eyes and say, well, it may take a year, but the athlete's probably going to get off, especially if they're high profile. And then you go to the case like you mentioned, Gabby Thomas. That case was egregious. That should not have been brought against her. It just feels like they're quick. The AIU is kind of quick to bring these cases, these preliminary suspensions against the athlete, and without even necessarily caring if they're going to be able to support it in a courtroom. It doesn't look good for them, and it doesn't look good for the sport. This is a strange scenario. Something in the system needs to be fixed. But like I said, it's probably a good day for Christian Coleman. He's got to feel better about his case than he did before yesterday.
And we kind of want to see Christian. I mean, I know we there's two halves to the argument. Like, people want to see Christian Coleman have to be punished for his lack of attention to detail with his whereabouts failure. But at the same time, the 100-meter final at Olympics would not be the same if Coleman's not in it. We just have to be like, if we see Noah Lyles go there and win the 100-meter dash in 9.8, everyone's going to be thinking, all right, what would happen if Coleman was there, right? You don't want that. Like, it's not fun when there's always like, well, we kind of know it's not a real title. I mean, it's a real title, but people always are going to be like, hey, it's like when the Raptors,
but if these athletes truly broke the
Kevin
rules,
Durant,
if the athletes truly broke the rules, then you expect this to be able to be followed through.
Yeah,
there's too many situations in the world where people with influence, they get into a courtroom if they've done something wrong and they're able to get off because of their influence. And that's what this is starting to feel like. That is very, like, look at the cases of Naser and Gabby Thomas. Like, Gabby Thomas had this brought against her and she was able to get off, sure, but the circumstances were much less clear and obvious that it was a whereabouts situation than it was in the case of Naser. Naser seemed pretty seal-proof, and I don't understand why the impetus, why the fault isn't on her side when she provides no instructions. And that's what I wrote in my article yesterday. It seems like there should be some punishment on the end of the athlete. It should be written in the rules when they don't provide an exact step-by-step how to access their residence. How is that not on the end of the athlete? That did not make any sense to me. And as I wrote, the ruling mentions that Naser, quote, did not help herself in many regards. She didn't help herself, but she did actually help herself because she was able to not be tested that day. Now, that does not mean that she would have tested positive. It doesn't mean that. But I just don't understand how we can say that about herself. Well, she did something that was looked down upon, but not, when it comes down to it, though, is not against the rules. That language needs to change, because this tester, yes, he didn't get to test her, and so I guess he didn't fulfill his job, but he worked pretty dang hard, and the directions were pretty confusing, and somehow Naser was able to benefit from that. That strikes me as a hole in the rule book here.
Like, do you think someone could be like, hey, I don't want to get tested, so I'm going to say my address is Antarctica. They're going to show up there. It's going to take them a long time to get there. I get to 3 misses at Antarctica, right? And then all of a sudden they'll be like, oh, we came to your house 3 times in Antarctica and you weren't there. They're like, oh,
Well, that's
I didn't mean
different.
Antarctica. I meant Argentina. I don't even know how to say it. Oh, my goodness.
Argentina.
There you go.
There we go.
Yeah, right? So,
I would hope that would be a different story. I mean, this was a case where the tester was probably, 200 feet away from Naser the whole time, but he was banging on a storage unit door, which is hilarious. And I did get a chuckle out of the fact that in the report, in the release of the court proceedings, there was the mention that you could see gas canisters behind the storage unit door as this guy's knocking on it. So it feels like there's like an SNL skit to be had here if track was a bigger deal of a guy banging on a door that if he kind of would have maneuvered a little bit and brought himself to look over it, he would have been able to see, oh yeah, that's not somebody's house. That's where they keep old rusty gas cans and stuff. So there were some errors on the end of the tester, and they do mention it's not at fault for it. They do not blame him. He did attempt to call her number. An updated, I forgot to mention this, an updated number was not listed in the database. You should have, and I know they say, and we learned in the Coleman case, well, there's no obligation to call. There should be a number, though, listed. And this guy had to go to an old number that he found because he was employed by the company. But I have to think because the company he worked for, the third party, had her old number because they're used to testing somebody of her profile. Called that was disconnected. This, you can look at it and say, Naser had been tested and she wasn't trying to maneuver out of these tests. Or you can look at it and say, this is someone who is understanding that they can get away with being elusive and they're not going to be punished. And that's exactly what happened. And that does lead you to cast some doubt on if Salwa Eid Naser is doing this 100% the right way. I don't ever want to suggest fully that an athlete is dirty, but when you don't have your phone number and you're not putting the full directions to be tested and you have other whereabouts failures on your record and you don't even yourself fill out your Adams database, that tells me you have something to hide. And other athletes were suggesting as much and were very disappointed in this ruling. It's not a good day for track and field. And this system only gets more head scratching. It's embarrassing. And the AI, I don't think anyone comes out looking good here. The tester doesn't look good. The AIU obviously brought a case against a high profile athlete and they lost. They don't look good. And Naser looks like she's at best clueless and at worst trying to evade testing. It's a bad look.
Yeah, it also shows how our sport is so fragmented. I mean, that like this type of stuff doesn't happen in major league sports where there's teams involved and there's a lot more infrastructure surrounding the athletes to make sure that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. Here, it's all like, it's kind of weird, right? It's like that. Like, I feel like sometimes athletes think, or like, I think a lot of times there are some professional track and field athletes who think they are the same level of importance as like the LeBron Jameses or the, Mike Trouts in baseball, whatever, Tom Brady's. We're like, hey, I'm the best in my sport. So therefore I'm at like a different class where you're like, I shouldn't have to worry about updating something on an app. I'm too busy training because I'm the best in the world. Like, someone else should cover that for me. Like, I am in charge of, I'm the number one in the sport. Because most likely Tom Brady doesn't need to update his whereabouts, right? The Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Track's a different situation. You're not going to have people in the NFL living in Bahrain, in California, in Finland, and it's obviously different. I mean, It's
well, that's
totally
what I'm saying. Yeah, because it's different. Though I think sometimes the athletes, though, just are sometimes might get a little too comfortable and be like, "I'm the star of the sport. Why should I have to worry about small details like updating my phone number or making sure I put the directions correctly for my address? Like, this should be someone else's problem, which it shouldn't. It should be your problem." But
yeah, it absolutely should.
People,
I am of the opinion that Naser should be suspended right now. And Coleman very well should be suspended as well. If we're going to bring these cases and there's rule breaking here, I don't understand how we can reverse these. I mean, I do understand because I understand the way hierarchy in our society works, where big name athletes are able to get off, but something in this system is broken. Whether AIU needs to scale back these suspensions to, at best or at worst, just save face for themselves, I don't know, because the AIU is a joke right now, and I appreciate the work they're doing, but their missions to hold these athletes accountable has not been fulfilled. So
it's like they're like a business that in 2020 that still uses Windows 95, right? They're like, they're just not with the times. Like, they just, this is how we always do it. Like, they're very simplified. They don't, they only know how to do it one way. And like you said, they take 400 days to solve a problem. Like, what the hell? Like,
you got to investigate, but there's got to be better ways to investigate. And I just, it's taken way too long. And that feels like something, it kind of benefits the athlete, even though I know Naser had to miss this entire season. Now it was a lost season, but I don't know why
like,
it needed to take that long. The longer it took, it's kind of like in a when a jury deliberates for a long time, it makes you think. The longer it goes, it's like, the athlete's probably gonna, or the defendant's probably gonna get off, because there's
like, why did they have he said, she said in at all? Because the tester should just have a phone with them with a camera, be like, hey, this is where I am. This is their house.
I think they need to change the rule about the phone call. I think we are all so connected. If there is hardly any situation, if I am at home, where someone could call me multiple times within an hour and I'm going to miss every single one of those phone calls. And I find it hard to believe. I can't believe that she was allowed to not list a phone number. They need to change the rule where the tester is under no obligation to call them. They should have to call, and it's not going to be.
And you know what they should do?
Like, my phone was off. No, that's not enough. Everyone has a phone these days.
Yeah.
And she should have had to have had her number updated, and the call should have been the thing. Hey, I can't get in. Where are you at? You need to be tested. And that solves this issue. The phone call rule has to change.
And they could easily make it.
You would have been able to get in, and this would be no debate. I think that actually benefits the athlete in some kind of perverse way that they're under no obligation to call. That makes it, that allows then the onus to be on the tester to have to find them. And if they're in this maze like Naser was, if the tester can't completely crack the code, then it's like, well, he couldn't find me. That's not my fault. I told him where to go. Well, one, she didn't even tell him where to go, and then the phone didn't even get picked up. Too much complication. That should not side on the athlete. I think I've wasted enough breath on this today, but this system is broken, needs to get fixed if we're actually going to do these whereabouts things. Because I think the world, if they were paying attention fully to this, would be like, if this was Usain Bolt, the world would be laughing at this, about how absurd it is that we can't get our high-profile athletes to follow the rules, and then they don't even get punished if they don't follow the rules. That's astounding to me. All right, let's move on to these rankings, which you updated late last night. This is as you dubbed them, the COVID era rankings of cross country. And if anyone's not caught up here, it is NCAA cross country rankings for teams who have competed during this weird shortened cross country season. I assumed, given that Northern Arizona debuted, BYU debuted, they would be up there and either, one. I assume Northern Arizona would be number one. They are, I think, the best team in the country. They won
I agree. I do think they're the best team in the country.
Oklahoma State and BYU over the weekend. Why is Northern Arizona ranked fourth on the men's side? Why are they behind Arkansas, Notre Dame, and most importantly, Oklahoma State, who they beat on Oklahoma State's home course last Saturday? Amit, you were in person. You have to explain to me how in the world NAU is fourth.
Okay, so first of all, let's take a step back. These are unique rankings. These are not like rankings we've done in previous years where we are subjective and we take into account athletes who maybe are tempoing or not even running yet. Different things like that where you kind of just look at a bigger picture. You're trying to really give a true, honest depiction of who is the best team, who's the second best team, right? Kind of like the college football playoff. It's not just the top four records, right? It's like you want to know who the top four teams are on the eye test. In this situation, it is not an eye test. It is just who you've run, how fast they've run, and that is it. So one thing I'll start with, all right, so right now the rankings are Arkansas 1, Notre Dame 2, Oklahoma State 3, Northern Arizona 4, BYU 5. So before that, it was Notre Dame 1, Arkansas 2, Oklahoma State 3, and then NAU and BYU weren't ranked because they hadn't run yet. All right, so first of all, why is Northern Arizona behind Oklahoma State, you may ask? So if you look at the result of the OSU meet, it's kind of deceptive, a little deceptive of what happened because Oklahoma State's number 4 man was, I think, 10 seconds better than NAU's number 3. And in this situation, there's a lot of points that will happen for a 10-second gap that would make NAU's 3, 4, 5 be a much larger number. If that makes any sense. When you add in more bodies, basically NAU's 3, 4, 5's point scores are much higher than. There's a lot more people when you add in other names that will fall between Oklahoma State's 3 and Oklahoma State's 5. Oklahoma State's 4 and NAU's 3. There's a lot more bodies that will fall between them that will fall in front of Oklahoma State's 2. Whatever. Fine. Regardless, what I'm trying to say is when you add in more bodies, the scores don't play out the way they do in a dual meet setting, which is what we had, or tri-meet setting. Also, NAU isn't getting credit for Nico Young. So you throw Nico Young in there, NAU clearly is a much better team, but we're pretending this is a Nico Young-less team. We're pretending this is a Theo Quacks-less team, Blaze Farrell-less team. Oklahoma. So all those factors is what, like, look at this. People forget. So NAU, they won, right? They had a 48-second spread. For perspective, they had a 16-second spread in Nuttycombe. So, like, we look at just the final result and we see NAU won. All right, they're dominating. They had a 48-second spread. That's a big spread. And if you have a 48-second spread and you throw in Arkansas and Ole Miss and all these other teams, Notre Dame, that 48-second spread makes your point total skyrocket. And that's the overall reason.
Mm-hmm.
Their spread wasn't that good.
Why are Arkansas and Notre Dame? Obviously, they haven't competed against Oklahoma State and NAU and BYU. Why are they ahead? I mean, in that reasoning or in that rationale, it seems like Oklahoma State should be number one, given the quality of the teams that they were really close to beating or beat in BYU's case. Why are Arkansas and Notre Dame ahead?
So Arkansas 100% is number one because when they throw in Amon Kemboy, you look at what they did at the Blazer Classic, they had a 13-second spread led by a top 5 guy. And they had a 13-second spread between the top 5. They had a 15-second spread between the top 6. They basically had a NAU at Nuttycombe type performance, but at the Blazer Classic. Now, again, the competition isn't as good, but their lead guy is a 1330 guy. They have a 1340 guy, and they're showing that they're at that ability. And then their pack, their 3, 4, 5, 6 are right behind them, just seconds away. Arkansas's top 6 run basically cemented them as all right, we have the depth to compete. Again, NAU is the best team in the country. These rankings, though, aren't showing who's the best team in the country. They're showing who is leading the race based off of performances that teams have thrown down. So
yeah. To me, though, when you said that, when you kind of explained the rationale of why NAU's behind Oklahoma State, Notre Dame, and Arkansas, you seem to sow some seeds of concern. Now, I know, again, they were without Nico Young, and word is that Nico Young has shown himself to be as good as advertised thus far in practice and training. However, without him, and we're looking at a team that we thought, one is experienced and had a bunch of guys coming back that had been All-Americans in the past. Are you not concerned with this roster in the long term heading into in 2021, where they'll run the NCAA championships on this course? Are you concerned that they are perhaps not as they ultimately will not be as good as we thought they would be?
Absolutely not. And I'll tell you this, because this team found out they were racing 2 weeks out. They thought they weren't racing until January.
Yeah.
So they're training like they're not racing till January. And then they get 2 weeks heads notice, oh, by the way, you're going to race. Oh, and by the way, we're going to drive 13 hours for the race. And by the way, there's really nothing on the line. Who cares if you win, lose? We're just racing to race. So the performances of, Drew Bosley and Brody Hasty didn't run well, right? They were in their top 6, but Drew Bosley's much better than what he did at that meet. So I'm not concerned because, same reason I'm not concerned for BYU. Brandon Garnica and Matt Owens ran even worse. They were finishing the 50s. At least NAU's pack finished in the teens. Oklahoma State was running like it was their championship race. NAU and BYU were running all right, we get to see the course. No pressure. I think that obviously Grijalva is just at a different level where he can go to a meet and try to win it, which is what he did. Same with a Mance and Klinger. But these pack guys, they just didn't have the same importance of trying to show what they got. Their fitness level isn't. Again, we're 5 months out from when they got to be their best. So their NAU's ranking right now is based off of an incomplete team and a resume in a race where there was zero stake. So it's like judging Aaron Rodgers' potential based off of his stats in a preseason game. You're you don't be well, Tim Tebow threw for 3 touchdowns in the preseason. Aaron Rodgers threw an interception, so therefore Tim Tebow is better than Aaron Rodgers. no, Aaron Rodgers is better. But in this situation, because it's COVID era, it's purely based off of what they do. So therefore, they're ranked fourth.
Well, you just to me highlighted my case against your rankings because you were talking about with NAU putting them behind Oklahoma State. Well, it's because if you make this more of a legitimate race, then Oklahoma State's going to beat NAU, which I can hear that argument. Absolutely. Yeah, NAU benefited from this being a small meet, but your COVID era rankings, I thought, don't have that context to boost them here. It's supposed to be, no, it's whatever you do, it's whoever runs, that's how we're going to judge you. Well, this was a small meet and this was all they had. So shouldn't you just look at it in the COVID era way and say, no, this is a small meet and I don't care what the context is outside of this. This is who won the meet and that's who should be ahead. And they don't have any benefit of any other bigger meets. So therefore they should be ahead of Oklahoma State.
No, I don't think you understand. The team rankings aren't calculated based off of how everyone's team performances are. It's calculated by taking everyone's individual, put them in one giant meet, and then scoring it.
Yeah, see, so, I missed that part.
Yeah, because how are you going to compare if a team wins one meet and a team wins another meet, how do you decide who beats who? You got to put them, you got to put all their individuals in one major mass meet. So basically what happens is I take every result and I give every result a rating, athlete rating, right? And basically it's whatever your best rating of the season is. So for instance, Oklahoma State's top 5, their top 4, their best ratings come from the OSU meet. But Ryan Shope, their true freshman, his best rating comes from Cowboy Jamboree. So basically, Oklahoma State's ratings are 4 from the OSU meet and 1 from the Cowboy Jamboree. Then that's their top 5. And those are the 5 ratings that go into the mega meet where we decide how it would have all played out. So therefore, NAU only has 1 rating for each person, right? So it's whatever they did. They don't have any chance to improve it or to make it better. Like Arkansas, like they had opportunities to make their rating better. And Notre Dame, their ratings are all just based off of a dual meet with Louisville. So they just had a really good meet at Louisville. So their ratings are just going to stay high. So there's no way for NAU to improve until they run another meet, which they're not going to do. But it's all based on rating. So everyone gets a rating. If you run 3 times, you have 3 different ratings. You take the best of your 3 ratings, and that's your representative rating. I put them into a meet that has 800 people in it. I score it. I take the top 35 teams, and then I rescore it with just the top 35 teams, and then these are the top 25.
Well, we're not going to get an 800-person meet during the COVID era. That's for sure. So this is, I guess, the way we have to do it. Yeah, you're going to find me being a skeptic of these rankings, but that's fine. I'm not trying to diminish the work you've done. That's great. One question I want to ask coming off this men's race at Oklahoma State, because separate from this cross-country season, which we know is short, like you mentioned, NAU is not going to run again. This was kind of just a glorified time trial for them. Who did you come away most impressed with? And I'll bring up 3 subjects. 2 will be individuals, one is a team. Who was most impressive? Luis Grijalva winning the meet, coming back. His last cross-country race was a dud. Now he's beating Connor Mans. 2, Casey Klinger finishes very, very well. He finishes, I need to get he got 3rd in this race in his first cross-country race in almost 3 years, coming back off a Mormon mission. Or 3, Oklahoma State, who we were kind of wondering. Dave Smith said, we're really good, best team since 2010, which would be absurd to me sounding because they won in whatever it was, 2012. And I thought, no way this team is this good. This team didn't even make NCAAs last year. But it does appear that they are actually as good as advertised. Who were you most impressed by, Grijalva, Klinger, or Oklahoma State as a team?
I guess I have to say Oklahoma State as a team. I'll say the reason why Grijalva's not there is because Grijalva, he's good. Like he ran 7:43 in the 3K. He had one bad race. He was great all the way the regular season in cross country. He is not the 50th best cross country runner, which is where he finished. He is a top 5 guy. I was impressed with his relaxation, but if someone told you Luis Grijalva was going to win this race, you wouldn't be like, wait, what? You'd be like, okay, yeah, I can see that happening, right? Casey Klinger, same thing. We knew he was good based on word of mouth. People were saying he's fit. He might even be better than Mance. So I guess there was a little bit of surprise, like, because you haven't seen it since 2017, so you just want to see it with your real eyes to show that he's fit. But people were saying he was fit for the past 6 months. So again, there's no surprise there. He's not he's a sophomore on paper, but let's remember, like, he's basically the same school year as Luis Grijalva. Like, they were both freshmen in 2017. So like, his body is that of a man, of a 22-year-old man. It's not like, it's kind of weird because your memory of Casey Klinger is of a true freshman coming off of NXN victories, right? And you're like, all right, this is year 2 of that. And it's like, no, this is really like, that was a long time ago. That was like 5 years ago, right? So that's why I think, like, it's just the Casey Klinger thing is like, it was just confirmation. It wasn't really a big surprise. Oklahoma State, that was the biggest surprise in my opinion. Watching it was weird because I was thinking, wait a minute, like, they're not falling off. Like, they're 2, 3, 4 are all there. Where's their 5? I don't see an NAU battling with their 2, 3, 4. Like, they might win it. And you could tell they were trying to win it. Like, they were putting all their eggs in this basket to try to prove people, like, hey, we're back. Oklahoma State's back. Because let's be honest, they haven't been good for about 3 to 4 years, right? So, like, it's great to now have Oklahoma State in the conversation of a podium team. Like, they weren't in that conversation since for a while, right? And I think that beating Iowa State kind of took back that mantle in the Big 12 because Iowa State was a podium team last year. I was surprised most by that. They still, though, aren't like, ooh, they might win nationals good, because you could see
even on their home course.
Yeah, you can see the flaws they had. Like, Isai Rodriguez isn't there yet, right? He was there.
I think he's pretty good. He's so aggressive and on his home course. I think there's some advantages there. I think he's a sleeper to win the national title. I actually left really impressed. Yes, I know he faded at the end, but he's just so aggressive and not at all, like, afraid. He doesn't care that his fitness isn't there. He's going to go up and challenge people. When he's fit, he's one of the best runners in the country.
Yeah, no, yeah. I just don't think he's there yet. I think that he's just not as fit as Mance and Grijalva. Maybe he'll get there, but I would put my money on Grijalva, Mance, or an Arkansas guy over. I think Isai is going to be in it. I think, though, he in the end will fade to like 10th, which is still good, right? That's still a low stick. But again, so they have him, but then they're 2, 3, 4. They're good. They're all still kind of like unknown commodities. I mean, Smeaton's a good steepler. I think their 2, 3, 4 all could finish top 40 on a good day, but then they also all could finish in the 60s, right? And if that happens, all of a sudden, then they're they're finishing 7th, right, instead of top 4. So I guess Oklahoma State is just going to be a show me on that day team for me. And then once they do, then they're going to be like a scary team. And the reason why they'll be a scary team is if they do show it in March, a lot of those guys return. And therefore 2023 and 2024 will be introduction of Oklahoma State back on the scene. Like, they're kind of like there on the scene yet, but you can't really be on the scene until you do it at a championship meet, right?
Yeah.
And then their 5th is a true freshman. So,
right.
Maybe he'll have
you
have a race of his lifetime. Maybe he ran. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Well, I was going to say, is NAU still the team of the future? Clearly, even though they lose Grijalva after this year. But you look at Oklahoma State, Rodriguez is a junior, and then their number 2 guy at this meet, Meyer, sophomore, Shisama, a freshman, a redshirt freshman, but a freshman. Smeaton's a senior, but then you go to Shope, who's a fresh, like you said, a true freshman. They've got a lot of potential, and it is cool. It feels right. Everything feels a little closer to right in the world when Oklahoma State is back being competitive and not kind of falling down like they had been the last couple of years. So it's cool to see them back. One more question before we end today's show. The three kind of surprised, maybe not surprised, because Arkansas is really stocked up with some quality names. Which team do you think is ultimately, though, a pretender of teams who have really done well in this shortened fall season? Arkansas, Notre Dame, or Oklahoma State? Which teams going to be off the podium when it comes down to it in March?
I would say Notre Dame. Yeah, that would be my one team that's like not really there. And Notre Dame and Iowa State, those two teams haven't really done much. I mean, Notre Dame, though, only has one race on their resume. It was a home dual meet against Louisville. I mean, Notre Dame, if they run well at ACCs, that'll be a better sign to show, like, okay, you guys got it. But until then, kind of just it's a wait and see on Notre Dame.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, when all is said and done, I think it's going to be Arkansas, Northern Arizona, BYU as a top three in any order, and then everyone else fighting for that fourth, with like it being a battle between Iowa State, Oklahoma State, Notre Dame, Oregon, those type of teams. So Portland, right? Portland will be probably that team.
Yeah. Right. Man, Arkansas, I'm just starting to get a little familiar with Arkansas. They are transfer U this year. They got JUCO transfers. Camboy, obviously the big attraction. Chabosin, he already seems to be better. And then you add back in Gilbert Boyd, who they didn't have last year. This is a team that didn't even make nationals last year. And all of a sudden they're like, they did.
They made it
because they're coming out of South Central. Yeah. Sorry.
But
they were
30th.
irrelevant. Yeah, they were bad. They're bad, basically, was the point. They are no longer bad because of their transfers and they're a year older. That is a team to watch out for. And I know you know that they're ranked currently number one in your rankings, but that's a team that could surprise people. It's fun to have these teams back. Like I was just talking with Oklahoma State, like, oh, okay, they're back after some down years. If Arkansas is back after some down years, I mean, that's a true legacy cross country program. It's going to be a fun meet in March, and maybe some people won't look at it at the March cross country championships as, it's a weird year with the pandemic and cross country in March. What is this? It's going to be a very fascinating race on the men's side and the women's side too. Of course, we've seen Arkansas, but we haven't gotten the full NC State experience. We haven't seen Caitlin Tui yet. We've got to see what New Mexico has to offer. They have the individual favorite. It's going to be really, really cool when this meet comes back to Stillwater and everyone's there. Hopefully we can pull it off because I love that course. I love what they've done with it. As Mike Smith said, the Bermuda, it's lovely to run on. I'm really excited for us, hopefully going in person, all going to Stillwater in March. It's going to be a fun time.
Yeah. And also on the women's side, I want to give a big shout out. Surprise team, I think, of the entire COVID era cross country season, the North Carolina women. They low key have been they've been having a low key great season. I have them ranked third right now. They've been running well. I mean, and they've been racing up against NC State in most of their meets, and they've been holding their own. It'll be interesting to see how they do at ACCs. But I'll call it right now. I think North Carolina will finish second at ACCs. That's my prediction.
Let's look at the North Carolina. I'm less familiar. It looks like they got a freshman that. Yeah. Is that right? They had a freshman win, or is that the B race?
Yeah, Sasha Naglila. Right. So this is their races. So at the Virginia Invite, they beat Virginia and Wake Forest in a tri-meet. So they beat Virginia and Wake Forest. And then at the Wolfpack meet, they got second to NC State, but, they held their own. And then at the Wake Forest, UNC, NC State, then they won that meet, but then they beat NC State's B team. So
yeah, I was going to say NC State did not run a good team. Yeah.
Yeah. But hey, they're
looking good for them.
It's looking good. This freshman, Sasha Naglila, How good was she? And she a true freshman, redshirt freshman?
Looks like it. Yeah, she only has 3 races on her T1st, so big
She's
things.
from
And
Tennessee.
NC State, UNC's got some big recruits coming. If I'm not mistaken, they had the 2018 Foot Locker champion coming ultimately to them. So Milt can recruit. There's no doubt about that.
They got Bryn Brown.
Yes. Yeah. So North Carolina on the women's side, maybe the team of the future, just like NC State. It's going to be a Tar Heel State battle, baby.
Yeah.
What's up?
I mean, this Sasha Naglia, she was 24th at NXN. So, but then she won like all of her other cross country meets. So
she's the Drew Bosley Bosley freshman. Stinks at NXN and then immediately is a factor in NCAA's. All right. Yep. That'll do it for us. I think we covered a lot of topics today. Email the show, FloTrack Podcast at gmail.com, and we will see you tomorrow.